Hi, welcome, bonjour and grüezi to the new episode of Governance Unplugged, where today we explore the topic Beyond the Checklist, the True Power of Internal Audit. I'm Thomas Michel. I'm your host with 25 years of experience in senior positions in internal audit and risk management for the Big Fours, and most recently as the head of internal audit, risk management and process improvement at the World Economic Forum. Our today's guest is Nicolas Steyaert, the head of internal audit of Swarovski. He has been in internal audit for more than 28 years. What an incredible milestone. That kind of experience gives him a truly unique perspective on how the profession has evolved over time, which makes Nicolas the perfect interview partner for today's podcast. Having that said, Nicolas, I think this is a great moment to introduce yourself to our listeners.
Well, thank you, Thomas. Thank you for having me. And yeah, you mentioned 28 years, so that's maybe 2 years from a bigger milestone. But you're right. Audit has been, a big part in my life. External audit, but then quickly internal audit, different corporation, serving, a lot of different global companies. At my time with KPMG, but also now since 10 years, I'm the head of audit at Swarovski. So yes, that's all my life, and hopefully we're going to dive in some interesting moments of it. So I'm curious about all your questions and the conversation.
That's great. Thank you, Nicolas. Before we start, I would like to ask you a few questions to warm up, to be ready to go in depth of today's topic. So 3 questions for you, Nicolas. If you would be played in a movie, what should the movie's name be? And which actor should play basically you?
Wow. Yeah. Movie, I have an instinct to turn to a very classic, like Alfred Hitchcock. So I think I would like to be in such a movie. There is a bit of, intrigue. There is a bit of sharp turns, this kind of moment of suspense and sometimes maybe humor. And then an actor, I think, and then, if I can ask for a lot, then I would bring back also actors, favorite actors from Alfred Hitchcock. So I think James Steyaert, Cary Grant, that would be perfect.
Great. Number 2, what was your first paid job ever?
Wow, then you have to go a very long time, probably, I would say age of 10 or 12. Then I remember in summer we had, in my hometown, we had a factory that were doing preserved meat, and they would, ask for people, to bring local ingredients. And my father discovered that, you could bring them bay leaves, laurel leaves, for those preserved meat. And so with my brother, we took days, we had 2 big trees, laurel leaf trees in the garden, and collecting them one by one. And then you realize as a kid that, oh, wow, it's going to take a long time to make a few kilos. So we worked patiently, a few days until we brought all this, and suddenly that transformed into a lot of pocket money. All of a sudden for me, made me very happy. After all those days of hard labor, that was my first paid job. I think like probably age 10, 12.
But what a great start in your career, right? And the truly ecological work on top. And here the last question, talking about your parents or your papa, how would your parents describe your job?
Well, that's, my parents didn't work in big corporations, so, internal audit might not mean so much to them. But I guess, what they grasp is, I must do something good for a company because they keep me employed and they keep me sending a paycheck at the end of the month. So I think that's what keeps them happy. If I'm doing something good somewhere, I think that's for them. That's what's the most important for them and then for me as well.
Amazing. Okay, Nicolas, let's jump into the little bit more serious question. So 20 years or 28 years in internal audit. The question is, what has changed the most? So when you look back to when you started many years ago, what was the profession like and what has changed the most over this time?
Well, I would say that's easy to say, but what has changed? Nothing and everything. At the end, when I joined internal audit, that's back in the 90s, it was already a profession in transformation. It was just not financial oversight anymore. It was a lot about, process efficiency. There was emerging like being an advisor, internal advisor to company. That was already, the time it was discussed. And when I joined, my first job in internal audit was at WorldCom, and back in those days, we had to be self-funded as a department. So it was actually really bringing dollars back to the company. And you can imagine, the plan at that time was a lot about just, costs, and bringing money back really to the company. I think what has changed really when I reflect now back is, the raised expectation. Management raised expectation towards internal audit over those years. And I think it's a good thing. And I think that's probably what kept me in this profession, right? I mean, we like the challenge, and we like, to be driven in things that go beyond sometimes our comfort zone at first. So if I look today, in my audit plan, I really have, three buckets. First is really to help on the company's objective. You have to support your agenda. You have to deliver audits that really serve, the company's agenda. I mean, it could be, growth, it could be transformation, it could be cash flow, it could be cost cutting. You need to dedicate a part of your audit activity to that. The second bucket for me that is also very important, and that's how you add value, it's also to protect the company. So that means, to target the company's risks. And, for example, for me now, right, as a retail company, inventory risk, is something you have to be very, very active on. But also, like any other global company, cyber risks is also, that's something that has to be part of your agenda. So targeting companies' risks also, for myself, are very important. And the third, I would say, it's more the traditional role. It's to provide assurance, right? So you help basically the board and the audit committee to fulfill their responsibility. They need assurance. They need assurance for me at the moment, represent two level more, the independent testing on the internal control system. So, we help the audit committee to make sure, yes, we have a robust internal control system. That's important for them. But we can also provide other pieces of assurance, like, for example, ESG reporting, right? So it's also where a new territory we can move, and actually the board is also interested to have assurance on that. So I think that's when I talk about a raised expectation, it's actually be active and very well aware of all this agenda. And it's also in the mix, right? I mean, we have limited resources and we cannot do everything, of course, but it's having the right balance between working on the company's objective, targeting the risk, providing assurance, and do it right. And that's where, I think that I believe, you really deliver value to the company and to all your audience, right? That's probably what I think makes it a profession that has evolved. It's also with this raised expectation from management. And I think that's my view.
Nicolas, you mentioned to serve the company's agenda and to be well aware. And I couldn't agree more. On the other side, it's not exactly an easy thing to do. You truly have to understand your organization, one from an organizational process perspective, but also very important from a cultural perspective. So if I may, what are your thoughts towards how do I become aware? Is it mostly through running the audits, or what's the magic to bring you at the table for relevant conversations, strategic conversations, project conversation within the organization, in order for you and the team to be well aware and to have laser-focused audits that really add value to your organization and to your board?
No, that's I think that's the challenge we have. And it's also to embrace, what works in the company, to have a lot of, sensitivity for the culture and how you can engage conversations on all the topics, because I think this is a role, we have also to bring good conversation, with every levels of management, and every levels across the company. So, from the shop floor to middle management, to senior management, to executive management, up to the board, we have to help the company to engage in all those good conversations. And I think that audit is not just defined about the audit activity, or the report. It's all the audit interaction. It's, everything you say, basically, and not for me as that, but also the team, right? So we have to find the right tone that it resonates with the people within the company.
That's fascinating to hear somehow that it didn't change much and it still changed so much, right, over the last almost 30 years, and how these changes also reflect broader shifting the governance and the business strategy of organizations, having a much stronger view and push on the governance or the corporate governance side of organizations.
Definitely.
So if we talk beyond the checklist, how internal audit became a strategic partner. We talked about a little bit now that internal audit evolves from a check the box watchdog towards more of a strategic partner and an advisor across the organization. So how did internal audit make this shift, or from a back office control functions to a true partner in driving value and influencing culture from your perspective and based on your experience?
Well, I mean, you say strategic partner. And I think that, internal audit, we really have one privilege when, in our companies and our respective companies. It's like, we are removed from the company's daily operation. That's quite a luxury, right? You have, it's quite a unique situation. You're removed from the company's daily operation. And I think that's a privilege as much as it is an obligation, because of course this privilege turns into an obligation. So what I think the question to be a partner is, what do we give back to the company from this unique position in the company? And I think that I reflect a lot on that, and I came to an analogy. I think that's what is really the ability, of internal audit. Actually, the ability of internal audit and how we can give back to the company is to hold a mirror to a team, a process, an entity, an organization. I think our value is just to give the reflection where they are, and they can then initiate the change. They may want to see something different in the mirror. Our ability is just to be a reflection. And I think that's probably at the essence of how we can help the company and be that sought after partner.
What are the reactions on you holding the mirrors to the people you, and I call it on purpose, review, and provide them with your reports, or actually with the mirror?
I think reactions can be different. I mean, it's like when you look yourself in the mirror. Sometimes you like yourself, sometimes you don't like yourself, sometimes you want to change something. Sometimes it's very emotional, sometimes it's not. But I think that's people in the business, it's everyone, I think, but it's a gift, it's a feedback, to have a reflection. I think at that time, we are not important. We are just holding the mirror. It's not us against anybody. It's us holding the mirror, and they can see their picture. And I think that maybe after the moment of reaction, then I think people have more direction. Oh, that's interesting. Then I didn't see that. Or now I see the full picture. And I think it's really this moment. It's like, okay, maybe you're right. Maybe I need to change the cut here. Maybe I don't like what I see. Or maybe I quite like it. Maybe I will make a few changes. Maybe I would be very radical. So I think the reaction, and I think if you introduce your audit work like this, you are likely to have such a good reaction. and also a lasting reaction, because that's when they're going to start to see change is interesting.
Yeah, and you say changes, so I really understand this is truly a change of the culture within the organization, right? If they understand it's a mirror and there is no direct impact on me, now it helps me to look and learn and understand the gaps and start to address improvements or enhancements and making the company better day by day, step by step. And you as an internal audit function, just mentioned it, not being a watchdog running your checklist, but really being like someone who wants to understand the business, understand the processes, and kind of being a big part of a positive shift of the culture or a risk culture within an organization. I really like that, the way you see it, the way you describe it. So thank you very much for this analogy. If you think back, was there ever like some sort of let's call it like a turning point where the internal auditor started to transition from the checking the box watchdogs towards the person holding the mirror being a more respected person or team at the table?
I mean, Thomas, I think I realized myself that, when I started in audit, or I started to do my first few audits, I had no idea about this. I think it's not a revelation now that, me and a lot of audit teams have. I think it came naturally. And I think it's following a good, healthy discussion on how, because the business has changed, there are so much more, audit objects, if you could say it that way, that basically we were forced to think of what is the essence of our value in a company, and how we can best help the company, not only to have the right control environment, because basically that touches everything, but with the right control environment, actually to empower the company to do more business. And actually we need to help people to do the right thing, whatever that is. And I think that the best tool we can give to the company is the mirror. And I never know better than the people that are doing those tasks day in, day out. I can just help them by holding the mirror, and they will make the change themselves. So yes, we have audit recommendation, like probably every audit reports include audit recommendation, and actually in agreement with them, once they had the look as well, what are the steps they are willing to take to change the picture they see in the mirror? And that's where we can help. That's where we can maybe add our creativity as well to it. But at the end, it remains their picture, their change. We are just a facilitator here. And I think it's probably a maturity of the profession. Probably 50 years ago, 30 years ago, we had no idea and we were searching. And I think probably, and there are a lot of great people, great head of audit, how we can really, really be valued in company. And I'm sure a lot of head of audits will agree on that one. And for me, it's something that is simple, and it reminds myself really on the true role we have, right, for the company.
So it sounds to me, or I take away from this, that we as an internal audit function holding up the mirror makes us true co-pilots in helping companies steer the plane and not just keeping the plane in the air.
We are definitely in the cockpit. We are not a passenger. You're almost like, a psychologist for organization. You need that to have that in the cockpit, right? It's helping, whatever is the burning topic, let's bring the audit. They're going to make a picture quickly. They're going to look in their manual. They're going to put information. They're going to make, transform information into insights and even into story for us. We need internal audit in the cockpit. We may not, the CEO drives the plane. The CFO is the second in command, next to the pilot to assist. But there are a few couple in the cockpit that needs to be there. Of course, all the executive management, a lot of, but definitely we should not be a passenger, because if you think a passenger, I mean, that's, and actually we have to go from the cockpit to maybe the body of the plane and come back and forth, right? This is also, we are kind of Sherpa as well, to help everybody in the organization, because our work is also, from helping all levels on the company. I mean, we serve a different audience. I think taking the mirror will capture maybe the top of the company, but it'll capture the bottom as well. It's a full picture.
So talking about running back and forward in the plane, let's talk about lessons from the trenches. So what makes a great auditor? The last almost 3 decades you have worked with countless audit professionals, some of them good, some of them truly great, some of them maybe less great. So what are the qualities that set great auditors apart? And have those qualities changed over time?
First of all, I think I really had the privilege to work with so many great auditors, and I think that none of them were bad or good. I think what is the strength, from audits, actually the diversity on the team, right? And everybody has different notes and different skills. And actually the greatness of a team is how you combine those skills, I would think. So for me, there is no good and bad auditors. I think that there are some characters. I mean, first, and you see, that's again, back to the mirror. It's the humility. You have to accept that you are the one holding the mirror. You are not the one looking into. So I think that you need some dose of humility. Maybe after you want to go to the other side and be the one that, you will look into the mirror. But for the moment, you have to accept you are just holding the mirror. At the moment, you will be completely transparent. You will not be seen because you are holding the mirror. So I think humility for me is very important. Second is curiosity. I mean, if you're not curious, I think internal audit may not be for you. I think that you really like you need to enjoy, to discover new things on a daily basis. You need to be thrown to topics you knew nothing about and really have some excitement. So you need this curiosity. I think that's probably people that, stay long in internal audit. I mean, they have to be curious. And I think the third character, I think that's very important to me. I mean, it's integrity. I know it's a very discounted word almost today, but integrity, I think people need to see that, when you are in audit. And integrity is a consistency of actions, right? You keep your values, you keep your principle, even if no one is watching. So integrity for me is also important. So if you take humility, curiosity, integrity, I think if you see that, I think that probably, yes, you would be in internal audit. But also when I say that, I realize at the same time that, humility, curiosity, integrity, that is for me the characters of a leader, right? That's leadership skills. So when people say, oh, now it's great, that future leaders have to go through internal audit, I think I absolutely agree on that, but it's not about the technical skills or the ability, to travel the world to different locations and get to know the company, but it's actually to develop those skills, which are humility, curiosity, integrity. And I think if you want to move up as a leader, if you learn those skills, and you will have to learn them, you will be forced to learn them in internal audit, then you keep that forever, and then you are very equipped to take future position in leadership of company.
From your perspective, what is more important? Are these the technical skills of an internal auditor or more the soft skills?
Oh, soft skills from far, very far. Very, very far. Technical skills, anyway, you're going to be thrown from one topic to the other. So unlikely you can have the technical skills that even if you are by luck, you have them. Like, I don't know, you were a customs expert or tax expert in your previous life. Okay, yeah, you got your first audit is a tax audit. Right. Next audit is going to be about, supply chain, nothing related to it. So you're going to have to learn completely new things, right? So, the soft skills that, yes, you need to learn fast, and you need to sense the room, and you need to adapt to your audience. You need to quickly go into the topics and nothing technical. And I think that's a big, people think that auditors, they need a lot of technical skills. The truth is very little.
Any memorable examples from the last 30 years where you worked with an interesting person, character, situation in one of your audits or traveling for an audit that is worthwhile mentioning?
No, I mean, we had a lot of, moments and tensions. I think, in audit, sometimes you work, you travel, you are with in different, culture, you work hard. It's difficult. You have the time pressure. And now we tend to do audits more relaxed because there's a bit of hybrid. Before we were just on site and, the stress of finishing everything. So which create a lot of tense moment, but a lot of joy as well as a team, to work late, finish the last draft before the closing session and all this. But one of the moment, and I think I had a lot of those moments, and privilege in my life, but I think that for me, my luck, and one of the start of my luck, it was like to start, in the internal audit of WorldCom, to be hired by Cynthia Cooper, who was the head of audit. And I think that people listening to this podcast, they know a lot about WorldCom. And now, you learn that as a case, and run WorldCom. But what was different is like it's internal audit, that, was the whistleblower. And for me, I have the picture, in my office still, of Cynthia Cooper on the cover of Time magazine as Person of the Year. And, what an incredible chance, to have started internal audit being recruited by a person that the only head of audit so far, I hope could be the last, that, made Person of the Year of Time magazine. And for me, that's an incredible story. So that's something that, is something that's, it remains a drive in my career. I mean, talking about integrity and a lot of things, of course, she passed on to me and the team working at that time.
So now we looked back and we talked about the present. So let's try to look ahead. The future of internal audit. What's coming next? What do you think is the next big shift in internal audit, Nicolas? How will technology, artificial intelligence, or changing expectations of the board, but also the regulators, shape the profession?
Yeah, I think we are, as audit, but as companies, we are, in an exciting time. The AI, the control environment, yes, a lot of potential there. Although I would say it's not completely new. I mean, when you look back, we had a lot of automation with our ERP system, semi-automation. We have the SAP, and, it's already transformed the way we did auditing. I mean, there is a lot of automated checks. I mean, it's an enabler for us to have moved up almost in the food chain, right? To become more pure player and not just, looking at the controls that fail somewhere, because now it's already captured. And I think AI will be to another level. And I think that's actually, for me, almost even more liberation. It's opened a new potential here. And I have no fear that, will it replace our jobs or whatever. Audit, if we are those psychologists of, organization, as long as there will be business, as long as there will be human running business, we can do audits because, again, we'll have the ability to hold the mirror. And I give you an example, like recently, we created in our company Responsible AI Group, and I was very happy that they took me on board on that, because it's actually also helping to give this reflection on how to use responsibly AI, and that's maybe a new territory. But I think this is exactly my role, and so it's also give me a lot of confidence that it will continue. And we can move to new territory. We'll adapt to the business, but we have done that in the past. So I think very confident that the audit profession at the end is fully ready if it really embraces its role.
Is there anything that excites you the most about the future of internal audit?
I think it is really that now with those change that can be leveraged, what's going to be And I think with this responsible AI, I had a kind of glimpse of the future of what and how we will deliver. I quite also don't know, but I think this is quite exciting. I think it's exciting to be in a profession that if again, you go back to just, we are here to hold the mirror, business will be done differently, but we will be there. We will be able to deliver. We'll find our way. I think we are equipped. We have done the journey so far. We will just continue the journey. How it will be, I don't know. Sometimes I get a glimpse of the future. Yes, yeah, if I had a magic power, I would be maybe like you. I would like to fast forward 50 years and really be curious how internal audit is done. But I bet it will still be there. We may not call it internal audit at that time in 50 years from now. Let's see. But I'm sure the activity as such will still be there. Or there is no human activity anymore. But that's another debate.
Nicolas, that's exciting to think about the opportunities ahead, and it sounds like the role of internal audit will only grow in relevance. So having that said, Nicolas, thank you so much for sharing your insights, stories, and visions with us today. This has been an incredibly rich conversation, and I'm sure our listeners are walking away inspired and better equipped to think about their own role in internal audit. But before I let you go, I have two final questions for you, Nicolas. One, coming back to our title of today's podcast, what is the true power of internal audit?
I'm sure you got it already now because we talked about it. It's the mirror effect. That's really our superpower.
Okay, I love that. And the very last question, what is the one piece of advice you would give someone just starting out in their career as internal auditor?
Well, I think that, and I don't know if, students will listen to this podcast or people interested in our profession. I think that I would just say it's an incredibly rich profession. If you want to do it well, you have an enormous playground. You can do a lot of good, in a company, if you really dedicate, your energy to it. And I think that's, again, I think we talk also about the characters and the ability. If you are able to embrace doses of humility, willing to help others, I think that's important. If you are curious, if you really like, to see things from a different perspective, and if you have a good, good integrity, if you really believe in that, I think that then internal is really, really for you, and it's a wonderful playground. So that has been for me, and it has been for many others. And I think that's probably there is a lot of cliche and, around the profession and, and they stick for decades, right? We're still the police, and of course, we all laugh about it, but you see, it takes a lot of time until people discover, what is the true face of internal audit, really a true value. I always say to my team, and teams say, every audit, we have more fans, right? It needs every audit. It needs people to experience it, to feel it. It's a challenge. It's an obligation, that, we have to deliver to the company, but it's so rewarding. It's so rewarding. And I think that's what kept me in this profession, honestly.
Nicolas, if our listeners would like to hear or read anything more of you, is there anywhere on a website, LinkedIn, etc., where people can connect with you?
They can connect to me, with me directly. Happy to share story. I'm based in Zurich, Switzerland. So yes, if you travel, if you are here and want to connect and want to explore the future of profession, I'm definitely passionate about it. People can reach out to me on LinkedIn very easily.
To our listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey beyond the checklist. If you enjoyed this episode of the Governance Unplugged podcast, don't forget to subscribe, share it with your network, and stay tuned for more thought-provoking conversations coming soon. Thank you for tuning in to this episode, and if you would like to discuss further, please do not hesitate to contact me via the email as mentioned in the podcast notes. Join the conversation. If there's a topic you would like me to cover or a guest you would love to hear from, feel free to connect with me over LinkedIn or visit www.keystone-governance.ch. Together, let's build stronger, more resilient organizations, one conversation at a time. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Governance Unplugged podcast. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and keep driving governance excellence.